Internationally, workers are even more vulnerable to forced labor because of very high rates of unemployment, poverty, crime, discrimination, corruption, institutional sexism, political conflict, and in some cases, cultural acceptance of the practice of slavery. Immigrants are particularly vulnerable to labor exploitation. Female victims of forced labor, especially women and girls in domestic servitude, have no one to complain to. They don't even have other workers living in the same house or the same location. And as I said, they are often sexually exploited as well. That's a very unique form of forced labor, and it's one we should think about. Involuntary domestic workers. They work in an informal workplace. They work in someone's house. They live in that person's house. There's usually no one else there to complain to or to report to. The environment is extremely conducive to exploitation. Look, we rarely inspect factories, which are required to be inspected by law. We certainly don't go around inspecting people's private homes to see who their maids, their babysitters, the person cutting their grass is, cleaning their pools. Foreign migrants, usually women, are recruited from less developed countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America to work as domestic servants, caretakers for children, cleaning women, lawn maintenance guys. They have no legal protection, none. In fact, because they're undocumented workers, if they complain, they'll be the ones arrested. They will be the ones who will face legal sanctions. Foreign domestic workers have few options. If they're confined to a home, they're usually physically restrained in some way. Their travel documents and identity documents have been taken from them. They don't speak English. There's no one to reach out to for assistance. And the irony, of course, is that in the United States, we make the victim of forced labor the criminal, and we do it consistently. The anti-immigration movement has demonized the victims and allowed the actual perpetrators, law-abiding householders, to go unscathed. Let me be real clear on that. You hear folks from Maricopa County, Arizona, and Orange County, California, complaining about Mexican immigration, illegal Mexican immigration. We arrest a lot of Mexicans. We now arrest people who put water and food in the desert so that illegal immigrants trying to get back to Mexico don't die. Think of how much more effective it would be to arrest the folks who own those houses, to arrest some upper middle class and upper middle class homeowners and housewives in Orange County and lock them up for 5 years. I'm willing to bet that locking up 100 rich white people in Orange County would have a lot more effect on illegal immigration than locking up 5,000 or 10,000 illegal Mexicans. But that's out of the question. That is not something we do. Victims of forced labor are found in sweatshops, particularly those involved in the production of shoes and clothing, agriculture, including some of the largest farms, processing companies, and canneries in the United States, in domestic servitude on construction sites and restaurants and custodial occupations, and of course in the sex industry. Once again, the focus of U.S. policy is totally xenophobic, focusing all our efforts on the victims rather than the companies, corporate farms, individuals who recruit forced laborers and hold them in slavery. Another fairly unique manifestation of forced labor and human trafficking is child soldiering. That's where we unlawfully recruit children under threat of violence, under coercion, to become soldiers in conflict areas, or at least to service military units in conflict areas. The perpetrators are often the governments themselves, making enforcement very difficult. Certainly there are paramilitary organizations, and let's be clear, paramilitary organizations don't exist on their own. They exist because they are funded usually by foreign corporations. In fact, two of the major corporations in the United States right now are funding paramilitary death squads in Colombia. Chiquita, the banana people, and Coca-Cola. millions of dollars a year, going to death squads, the recruitment of children for soldiering, the recruitment of children for military service. The majority of child soldiers are between the ages of 15 and 17, but a lot of them are as young as 7 to 8. There are tens of thousands of them in conflict areas around the world. According to the UN today, there are 57 armed groups and military forces around the world using children or forcing children to be soldiers. Children are abducted to be used as combatants. Children are abducted to serve combatants. They work as porters, cooks, guards, servants, messengers. Young girls are abducted and coerced and forced to have sex with male combatants. Both male and female child soldiers are sexually abused at an enormously high rate and carry the risk, a very high risk, of contracting sexually transmitted diseases. Child soldiers are particularly common in areas of the world where armed conflict is related directly to the production of valuable commodities exported to the United States and Europe. In Africa, the gold mining and diamond mining industries make heavy use of forced child labor and child soldiers in regional conflicts and in the operation of illegal mining operations. In Southeast Asia, in the Golden Triangle, Thailand, Burma, Laos, children are recruited by warlords into paramilitary armies, particularly in areas where the illegal mining of rubies and sapphires are common. Those little gold bands that we all wear, or a lot of us wear, or that I used to wear, that have those lovely diamonds on them, that indicate just how much you are loved and how important the sanctity of marriage is, are covered with the blood of children, child slaves and child soldiers, period. You ought to think about that. You ought to think about that a lot. Sex trafficking also makes up a significant portion of human trafficking. Anytime we coerce a person, force a person into prostitution or maintain that person in prostitution through coercion, that person's a victim of trafficking. We find those people on the streets, although not very commonly on the streets. We are more likely to find them in commercial sex operations, brothels, escort services, strip clubs, bars, the pornography production industry. Those are common enterprises, very common enterprises. In Richmond, Kentucky, here, there are 3 massage parlors. 3. My students often look at me like I'm nuts when I say that. They're easy to find, they're in the phone book, and they have neon signs out front. It's not a place you go when your muscles ache or you have a kink in your back. They're for a very different kink. We tolerate the open sale of women, open forced prostitution. 2 million children are subjected to prostitution in the global commercial sex trade, in both child prostitution and child pornography. A particularly pernicious aspect of all of this is child sex tourism these days, where people from countries like the United States, where it is technically illegal to have sex with a child, travel to a country where it's not only legal, but a means of magnifying the economic development and the tourism industry in that country.